This is Women Who Podcast. You are gifted with a voice. Now is the time to use it. Meet the Women Who Podcast. Hear their stories so you can be encouraged to turn your ideas into reality. Welcome back to Women Who Podcast, the podcast for women who have something to say. My name is Alison Fraser, and through this podcast, my aim is to inspire more women to get podcasting and to champion those already doing it. My guest today is Rain Stickney from the Every Moment is Sacred podcast. Rain is a lifelong meditator, expressive artist, and a body worker. She has an integral approach using body, mind, heart, and spirit to gently guide clients and support community into their own natural wisdom. Her podcast, as you will hear from Rain, is a mix of interviews, meditations, and poetry. If you're finding this time of year difficult, then have a listen to Rain, and you may find that her podcast has just what you need. Let's hear from her now. Welcome on, Rain, to Women Who Podcast.
Oh, I love the name of your show.
Thank you. It's a recent change.
Thank you for having me, Alison. It's so wonderful to be here.
Your podcast is called Every Moment is Sacred.
That's right.
What gave you that name?
That is such a good question. And actually, a new podcaster asked me that question just recently because she's naming her show. And my story is that the show really named itself, and it took me listening, and somewhere in my scraps of notes and creative projects, there was this little slip of paper that said, "Every moment is sacred." And I had put it on top of a origami paper. So it was like framed with origami, and I put it on my wall above my desk. And when I was naming my podcast, I was thinking of other names like Stillwater Meditation, because that's the meditation group that I've led for years. And nothing was feeling quite right. And then I saw that paper on my wall. And I thought, of course, every moment is sacred because that's what's true.
It was staring you right in the face.
Literally.
So let's backtrack to the beginning. What led you to start your podcast?
Well, years ago, probably around 2016, I started recording meditations because I was a mother of a young child, and it was difficult for me to lead the in-person groups the way that I was doing before I was a mom. And I started some online groups. And so I experimented with recording the meditations, and they were honestly terrible recordings because my microphone was terrible and it was really just an experiment. But over the years, I collected hundreds of meditations that got better and better over time. And I also fell in love with listening to podcasts around that time. And I had a good friend who was a podcaster, and he always encouraged me to start a show. But of course, it took many, many, many years until I was ready. But there were little seeds planted along the way.
And I guess that when you launched your podcast, it was the right timing to do it because how many episodes? And you've done a lot of episodes.
Yes. I'm in the 80s now. I'm almost to 100, and my year anniversary is November 7th of 2023.
So you're producing quite a lot of content for your podcast, whereas some podcasters might be every 1 to 2 weeks. You're pumping out more than an average of 1 episode a week.
Yes.
Was that deliberate?
Well, it's still an experiment, and it always was an experiment. And I feel very in touch with my creativity. And so rather than having a plan where this is the way it is, it's much more of a creative process and flow for me. And I started out with short mini episodes once a week that grew to twice a week. And then when I felt ready, I shared the conversations, which were also twice a week. And then I cut back because I thought that is just too much. And I did once a week. And then I didn't feel as connected to the rhythm and pacing of podcasting that inspired me. And so along the way, I also recorded a bunch of poems that my mother wrote. And my podcast became 3 times a week. So now we have Tuesday poems, Wednesday meditations, and Thursday conversations.
That's a really good mix, though. It's not all the same.
Yes, and I love it because the poems are short and sweet. So you can literally brush your teeth and listen to a poem. The meditations are a little longer, nice break in the day, or some people fall asleep to them. And then the conversations are always, a bit lengthy. So you can really get into the juice of a topic.
Has podcasting changed how you do your meditation practice, or is it just an extension of what you were doing before?
That is a good question because my professional meditation practice has changed, and I don't actually know what it's changing into, but I have pulled back from some of my online activities because there's so much online presence with podcasting that I also need to have the counterbalance of nature. And so in this moment, I don't have a regular online meditation group, although we will be meeting again on December 7th, and that is very exciting. I'm excited about what it can grow into. So there's an evolution that I'm living through around what my offer is that includes meditation. I've had a wonderful free group in person here where I live at the library, and that's been really fun. So I am changing what the meditation offer is for sure.
It's really cool because, yeah, as you say, your podcast has been evolving. So there's no reason why your business can't also evolve.
Yes, I find it's just something else goes into the mix, and that changes the proportion of all the other ingredients. And then instead of a cake, maybe we have a souffle. I don't know.
Were you a podcast listener before you started podcasting?
The first show I really fell in love with was when my son was 1. So that's probably around 2015. And it was a show about parenthood, and it was called The Longest, Shortest Time. And it was about that early stage of parenthood where everything seems to take forever, and yet it's gone in the blink of an eye. And that show made me cry. I listened to it when my son was sleeping for his nap. It was like my break in the day to feel my own heart. So that was my gateway into listening to podcasts.
Can you remember how you discovered podcasts? Like you said that was your first podcast, but how did you learn about podcasts in the first place?
It was really through an old boyfriend, and he loved podcasts, and I really could not get into them. And he would listen to them while we were working out or running because we actually trained for a marathon and ran a marathon together. So there was a lot of like running time, and it's common to listen to something while running, but I didn't take to it. I wasn't interested then. I was much more interested in listening to music. But that was like another seed that was planted along the way, was his interest in listening to shows.
Yeah, because I mean, podcasts have been around for such a long time, but I think you have to be introduced to it by someone else. I mean, it is an app on our phone, and I guess some people might not even think about tapping that app because they are used to listening to music.
It's so true. Not everybody likes to listen to podcasts, or they haven't found the show that really interests them and really gives them the tug to move forward with it.
Well, maybe it could be your podcast, Every Moment is
Could
Sacred. For someone who's never listened to Every Moment is Sacred before and they want to pick one episode, which one would you say would be a good one to get started with? Or just because you said before you have poems, meditations, and conversations. Is there anything that is mostly
every moment is sacred, like in a nutshell?
Oh, yeah, that is such a great question. I haven't thought about it quite like that. I do love the trailer, and that's the most listened to episode, which is ironic and funny because when I was in a podcasting class, one of the instructors would say, "Nobody ever listens to your trailer. Don't worry about it." But my trailer gets listened to a lot. So that's a good place to start. Although it's an old trailer and it doesn't say anything about creativity or poetry. And so that really could be renewed over time. I can say that my most popular episodes are about narcissism. People really love to share about their experiences with a narcissistic person in their life, usually a parent. And then I also have one expert so far talking about a more professional perspective of what narcissism is and what that means for humanity and what the healing is. So those are very popular episodes. But then for the meditations, I'm also thinking about the poems. The best poem, the one that everybody loves, is the one that my son reads, which is called Blood Oranges. And he's 9 now. So it's really fun to hear a child read his grandmother's poem. And a meditation that people really love is called Miracle Happening. That's one that's high up on the list.
Well, I will find those and put those in the show notes.
Thank you.
How has your life changed since you started your podcast?
Wow. Another good question. Goes straight to the heart. I moved to Vermont 3 years ago. I lived in California and was born and raised there. And here in Vermont, it's taken a while to really build community and feel friendships. And I love living here, but the space of connections has been slow to come. And a lot of people who've lived here for a long time or their whole lives say that it takes about 5 years to really get connected. So through podcasting, there's something that has shifted in me where I feel really good about what I'm offering to the world, and it's a global reach. And so it takes the pressure off of Vermont. And where I love in-person connections, it is really, really, really fulfilling to know people in New Zealand and Spain and Bulgaria and the States and all over the place, and South America and Australia. It's like there is this community of people that is so lovely that I get to be a part of.
Yeah, we truly are a global village.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What tip would you give to a woman listening to this who has been thinking about starting a podcast but hasn't done it yet? What tip would you give her?
I've been thinking about this because I've listened to a few of your episodes, Allison, and I've wondered what would I say? There's so much that I could say. But the most important thing is to listen to your heart. And if you have a call to try, go for it and have fun with it and do what lights you up. But more than that, catchphrase, it's like do the thing that you would do when nobody's watching. Like you're creating a stage for yourself. So do the thing that's like your secret joy that you love more than anything.
I love that. On a recent episode, I spoke with Jen Liss from Untethered with Jen Liss, and she was saying how it doesn't matter how many people are listening to your podcast because you should be doing it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that
I
feels the
believe that's
same
true.
way. Building your own stage. I love that.
Yeah, I was thinking about just that before speaking with you because my friend who had a podcast long ago who encouraged me to create one, his show was called Together, and it was a show about relationships. And it was a great show, actually. I've never heard anything like it. He did a great job. And when I look at the ratings and how the show did, and he's no longer producing it, but it was not a very successful show. but it was a great show. It was an amazing show. I want everyone to listen to that show. And what's important is that he got that voice out there, and the voice of many, many, many couples and their experiences of relationship. He got that out into the world, and anybody can still go back to what he shared and be touched by it, be touched by his creative act.
That's beautiful. I will link to that also in the show notes. But
It's still, right. I mean, many people still could listen to it. Who knows?
Well, that's the thing you said that your most listened to episode is your trailer, which came out, over a year ago. But, you don't have to listen to podcasts in the order that they're produced. You can go right back to the beginning. You can dip in and out listening to episodes that speak to you right there and then.
That's right. There's a lot to scroll through. And sometimes I do that with people's shows who I haven't listened to anything they've created so far. And I might just look through the whole list to see what grabs my eye, what sparks my interest.
Is the episode title, is that something that is important to you when you're looking through those podcasts?
I think so, because either it's a name of someone I know or somebody I'm interested in, or there's some keyword that I don't know anything about, or I do know something about and I want to hear a different perspective. And also how things are phrased. I enjoy how people put together their titles, and no right or wrong, but it's true. Some things do catch my eye and some things don't catch my eye.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson for all of us in how we name our podcast episodes. What podcasts are you currently listening to that you would like to share?
Oh, right. Let's see. I'm thinking about my library. The most listened to podcasts right now are the ones that my son listens to. So he likes all the children's shows like Stories, podcasts, Little Stories Everywhere, Sparkle Stories. So those are his shows. And when I'm alone in the car, to be honest, I really listen to my podcast friends often. And so I could name a bunch, but then I'd be leaving a bunch out. But She's Brave by Christina Driscoll is really great. And You're Allowed by Alicia Sutton is really wonderful. And Living Your Purpose with Lydia Gilman is excellent. And so I often listen to shows produced by people who I've met podcasting.
Yeah, there's so many great shows out there.
Yeah, there really are.
Well, I actually had Christina on just a few weeks before our episode together. So it's cool that you name-checked her. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about podcasting in general or your journey?
Let's see. I find podcasting to be a very exciting world where there is so much opportunity to try something new. And along with podcasting, I've started playing with Instagram lives. And that's something that I tried last year at this time, and it didn't really, it was a little too much for me. And so I did not continue. But now this year at this time, I'm doing about one live a week on Instagram, and it's really fun. I'm really ready for it. So there's this interesting opening into the world of technology that really can go bit by bit. We don't have to do everything all at once. And for me, I cannot do everything all at once. I really need to take off my little nibble and enjoy that. And then another little bite and move forward. And I love the journey of not really knowing where this trail will end up, but I get to play And I get to play with you and so many other people.
Yeah, it is something that can lead to so many other things. And as you say, the Instagram Live, I guess, is from the talking into your microphone for your podcast, where that is now normal. So the Instagram Lives is more normalized than before you started podcasting.
Yes. I mean, boy, before podcasting, I knew about Instagram Lives, but I was not interested. It just wasn't for me. But now I'm in a different world. So who knows?
Who knows what's next for you?
Yeah. Who knows how this continues?
Well, I'm sure you'll just keep on producing some great content, and your podcast will evolve in the direction that it's meant to go.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really fun.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Rain. It's been a lot of fun.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Isn't Rain's voice perfect for her podcast? When I was talking to her, it was so calming, just what you need when you're feeling frazzled. Last week, I shared how you can make sure your podcast keeps going over the holidays. I'm sharing what I've done and how in my membership group, so you can pick my brain there. For now, I can tell you that this podcast is continuing right through the holidays with episodes published every Wednesday. That's if you're in New Zealand and Australia, and Tuesday for the rest of the world. These episodes are all brand new interviews as per normal, and I can't wait to share them as I know you will get a lot from them. I'm heading away for the holidays myself. In fact, I'm leaving New Zealand in just a couple of days to head back to the UK for a winter Christmas. Next year on Women Who Podcast, there will be interviews with experts in their field with bonus content for my Women Who Podcast community. So if you want all in, come and join us. It's currently $15 a month, but that will be going up on January 15th. So get in before the increase if you don't want to miss out. That's it from me this week. I'll be back next week with another interview. Thank you to my podcast supporters, Mary Hanlon, Kristen Wilson, and Alice Nichols. You too can support the show at Patreon. All links are in the show notes. You've been listening to Women Who Podcast, the podcast for women with something to say.